Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Rejuvi 45. If you are looking for a community that is dedicated to doing things differently in the leadership space and in the leadership development space, then you've come to the right place, because this organization, this community, Rejuvi 45, is all about modern leadership. My name is Regina Hepp, and I am with Rejuvi. And today I am joined by someone very special, a longtime colleague and longtime friend, Kathy Shields.
Thank you for inviting me, and I love the journey that we've been on for a while with Rejuvi. It's been very, very fun.
So it's so good. It's so good to have you here. I know that you've been with us over the past 2.5 years since we've been on this kind of Rejuvi 45 journey a number of times, but I can't say it enough for those maybe being listening to Kathy Shields for the first time. When I think about the quintessential learning and development professional, I think of Kathy. She's had this beautiful career leading all slices of learning and development. Of course, we didn't call it learning and development back in the day. We called it training. I think it was when I first started, it was called training and development.
I
Was
think
that
so too.
you too, training and development? Then I think we went into kind of human resource development. Then it became learning development. I think now we call it kind of talent development, but we certainly see it go through lots of changes.
A
Yeah,
lot of changes, yes, and each time there's improvements along the way. Yeah,
I absolutely agree. Well, we are here today. We have this this little picture of a piece of glass, or like a frame being broken, and we're here to talk about breaking the frame, especially as it relates to feedback. Feedback, how you collect it, how you give it, and how advanced analytics and emerging technologies are completely changing our capability to help people with feedback, both giving it and kind of receiving it. It's fantastic. So before we get into that, this was a really fun session to do with you. I think just because of both of our backgrounds in both the human capital development space, making people better, and in the org development space, making businesses better, you have to find things that work, right? And so I think that's when you got to find things that work. You can't live in this space. You can't be successful in this space unless you yourself can give feedback in a really healthy way, and unless you can help leaders to give feedback, to others in a really helpful way. Right, Kathy? I mean, that is, I don't even know how else to say it. It is such a core muscle that we need inside of our space.
so very true, and the timeliness of it. When we talk about this, I'm reminded of a leadership program that I was working on, and one of the very senior leaders was invited to come in and speak to my class, and he talked about feedback. He was entered the business as a salesperson, and he traveled early on in his career with a senior leader, and they finished their sales day, and the leader went off to work with someone else. 6 months later, this senior leader was getting his feedback, and the manager who had observed him said, well, if you had done this and this and this, you would have been much more successful. But think if 6 months had passed, so that the quality and the timeliness of feedback is so critical.
When you were talking about receiving his feedback, was that, for example, in the context of like a performance review process? Was this person getting, like comprehensive feedback inside of like a 360?
It was a performance review that he was getting, but it was 6 months later.
Oh my goodness. Well, okay. So when we think about things that have resonated with us, that have helped us in our careers, and that we know have helped other leaders as it relates to feedback, what are some of the things that come to mind to you, besides, for example, the timeliness of it, because that in and of itself is critical. What are some things that come to top of mind to you, Kathy?
It's the quality and the honesty, I think, of the feedback. If you skirt around it and the person doesn't understand what you're talking about,
Mhm.
you've wasted their time and yours. You have to be honest and forthright to have the person really understand what you're saying.
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
that's critical.
Yeah. That reminds me of something because I agree, it's timely and it should be honest and forthright. There should be some kind of clarity of message. Now, as
Yes.
we were getting ready for today's sessions, we were kind of trading a couple of articles, and I think that one of the things that we came up with which is this: in many cases, when we talk about giving feedback, yes, it needs to be timely. Yes, you need to be honest and forthright when giving it. One of the things that we've taught our leaders is, these kind of what I would call sweet methods of, helping them to give feedback. And a part of it is, people would talk about like the Oreo method. I'm gonna actually hold this up. I know people like, you print so much paper. I know, but this is a little drawing about kind of types of feedback, and you see all different types of cookies. But there's a woman named Liz Fosling. I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. She's a great follow on LinkedIn. Again, you can kind of see her name right there. But she does a lot of drawings around reinforcing principles. And in this one, she talks about types of feedback. Well, there's the Oreo, where you give two positives, like those are the chocolate pieces of the feedback. And then there's the honesty kind of in the middle. So I think that when you talk about quality or honesty and forthrightedness when giving feedback, I think that what we're really learning is sometimes these kind of, strategies for kind of giving feedback, they're not really super helpful, like, because if you're going to give something positive and then something, constructive, and then you're going to have another positive to kind of round out this Oreo method of giving feedback, you lose the focus on what you're really trying to say. And I think that was why there was this other article that came up to us that I can't remember the exact title, but it was talking about learning to be a velvet hammer
Mm.
when you give feedback. And I feel like a velvet hammer is all about be clear and concise around what the feedback actually is, but be gentle in the way that you deliver it. Ask for an invitation to say, this is what I see. Do you see the same thing? Did you take it in the same way, Kathy?
I did. And make it a conversation. Be a part of that ownership. How can I help? How can we do this together? Rather than, that the white part of the Oreo, if you will, which
Mhm.
is can be construed as negative. It's not
Mhm.
meant to be that way, but when you have a really lovely chocolate and you've got the middle piece and another piece of chocolate, in the Oreo example, sometimes we lose that middle piece and
Mhm.
the employee walks away. Oh, it's good. I heard two really positive things. It's but
I,
if we co-own helping, to get through this
mhm.
and to be very, to have a conversation about it, I think
Mhm.
is really much
Mhm.
better.
Yeah, I like the word co-own. And sometimes I think that for me it's about just say what you see,
Yes.
right? And I think that one of the many, many years ago, someone said one of the easiest principles when you say what you see is always recognizing the difference between, you're not trying to tell someone who they are. You're just trying to share what you see. And invite them to the table to have that conversation about what you see and why it exists. Because when you do that, you can start to create clarity about the middle part of this Oreo. And that to me is so key. Otherwise, it's like, why even bother giving feedback? If there's no clarity, people don't know what to do differently. People don't even know what the message is, you know?
It's so very true. And, with that conversation taking place and shared, I think it does come through clear.
Mhm. Mhm. You know, the third thing that, as we just talk about, some feedback principles that have been important to us over our decades of service to making people better and to making businesses better, isn't just about the timeliness of it or about, the forthrightedness or honesty of it through this kind of a velvet hammer approach. But there's also, I think, this thing about making sure you set up an environment so that people can respond rather than react. Now, you spent some time in some of that research and some of that reading. What was significant to you about what this message is about setting up an environment where someone can respond versus react?
To me, I have facilitated many, many emotional intelligence courses, and it's about our emotional intelligence. And when we hear something, our emotional intelligence teaches us how not to do that instant reaction,
Yeah.
but take a pause and to really listen to hear, because the feedback, though might be very hurtful at first, the feedback is meant to help.
Mhm.
And I need to take a breath, a pause, and think about it in that format before I react. So I
Yeah.
saw a lot of synergies between what the article talking about responding and reacting to emotional intelligence.
Mhm. That for me kind of connects this emotional intelligence kind of connects to that phrase that someone gave me years ago was in, always understand that there's a difference between what you see and who they are. And if you can create clarity of that line, that to me is like almost the very definition of emotional intelligence, right? Is that you can fully embrace, understand who someone is, but you're not giving them feedback on that. You're just giving them feedback on what you see, and you're inviting them to the conversation. And I think that when you do that, your results are so much better because people then can respond, right? And you don't feel like you're being pushed up against a wall. You don't feel like you're being backed into a corner where the only thing that you're able to do is react, you
Mhm. You feel intimidated, but in what you're describing, you feel very comfortable. I'm very confident in hearing this, that I need to hear it, and
know?
confidence, because of the way it's brought to me,
Mhm,
doesn't put me in that corner.
yeah. So breaking the frame, none of these concepts that we're talking about that work are going to help us to break the frame, but they are principles I think that have been important to both you and I as leaders. We've both been in leadership roles where we've had to know how to give feedback. We also know how to receive feedback, right? So these are principles that have, I think, stood the test of time for you and I over the decades. And I think that some of the things that are a little bit surprising to me, and I'm sure part of that is just, age and maturity, that sort of thing. But it's sometimes surprising to me, that some of these concepts, around timeliness, around honesty and forthrightedness, and using processes like a velvet hammer approach, and inviting people to see the difference between what you see and who they are so that they can respond rather than react. I think what's surprising to me is, um, every day new leaders have to learn this, right? We have so many generations now providing leadership. And so sometimes I smile because I'm like, wow, even though these are things that I've been using or teaching for decades, it's new to, this particular leader. And so we do have to embrace that, but it's not breaking the frame,
I
right?
think so true, yes. But I think what's changing, as you mentioned, years of experience, and I've loved every one of them, but something that's really changed when we started, or at least when I started in the learning and development and talent management area, feedback was mid-year review and end of the year review, maybe, one-on-ones that could be frequent or not, but there wasn't a way and ability for me as a junior leader through a more senior leader to get ongoing feedback. And I think that's changed today. And I think that is helping break the frame.
I couldn't, that's why we love having you at Rejuvi 45. I'm going to get my Rejuvi. Did you know we have these now? We have Rejuvi Rubik's Cubes.
I love it. Yes.
Yes, so people know who've been to a Rejuvi Train the Trainer or who have been to Rejuvi 45, they know that I often think about modern leadership and its modeling as a Rubik's Cube, but I always had to use this general. I have this set up right. Yeah, we have this general one, Rubik's Cube, but now we have Rejuvi ones. But I couldn't agree with you more about the frame is now being broken, right? Because I think when you just think about, let's focus on the ability of us now to actually give a leader healthy feedback. I actually believe I'm interested in your opinion on this. I believe that almost all leaders, and I would venture to say all leaders, want good feedback, right?
Oh, wholeheartedly agree.
If,
Yes.
if, if they're being thrown into a corner, of course, no, thank you, right? If it's 6 months too late, like why bother, right? If
Mhm.
it's not honest and forthright, forget about it, right?
Yeah.
But I believe that almost all, if not all, leaders want good feedback. And you are absolutely right that the frame and our ability to give leaders good feedback, the frame has been broken.
Mhm.
Primarily, it's been broken by these three words: modeling, analytics, and technology. We now have so much more ability to give leaders this timely, this honest, right, feedback in a sequential way that allows them to respond and not to react. That's what we now have the capability to do.
And, Reg, when I hear that, of course, I wholeheartedly agree with it. But when I hear that, I'm going, oh, think of all the time that that's going to take. And that's a false statement.
Right.
It doesn't take that much time today.
It doesn't take that time. Well, let's talk about some of those examples because this is what you and I got so excited about for today's session. And so let's focus on these three words: modeling, analytics, and technology.
Mhm.
Because those three words are the things that have broken the frame for how we now can provide leaders feedback that meets the characteristics that were important to us over our career. So let's start with modeling. So people know that I often use a Rubik's Cube to talk about the modeling of modern leadership. And the reason why I use a Rubik's Cube is because modern models of leadership are not linear.
Mhm.
And the reason why they're not linear is because in the past, when we thought about leadership, the models that we were used were based on human growth, the leader themselves. And so we gave feedback based on the competencies or their behaviors as a leader, right? That's kind of what we did, which is important to do, right? Now, full stop. In other places, we learned to give feedback or to quantify what that leader was leading, their business, how it was being run, the results that it was actually achieving. But in modern models of leadership, it brings those two things together. Growth of the leader combined with growth of the business. And that produces something that's not linear. Because you're bringing two things together and it creates something that is actually multi-dimensional. And so it all starts with modeling. And, one of the things that I talk to people about is when I describe this dimensional model of leadership, I literally can be in a bar. And I have been in a bar. And I take napkins, or toasters, and you need 7 of them, right? Napkins, and rip them apart into 7 pieces, or you take 7 coasters and you're explaining how this dimensional model comes together, because there are 3 pieces that describe how the leader becomes this compassionate, wonderful human leader. And there are 4 pieces that come together that help them to understand, how running their piece of the business, this line, this department, this function comes together. And I can be in a bar with 7 pieces of a napkin, or 7 coasters, and you can describe this for people, for business folks, and they're like, well, why didn't somebody just tell me this, when I first started as a leader? It makes so much sense to them, this dimensional modeling. What has been your experience? I know you have had a chance to describe this dimensional model to people many times.
You know what excites me? Everything you said excites me because it's new. It's the modern way of leadership. And again, I go back to the years that I worked through a lot of these leadership programs. But the other piece that really excites me is that this isn't just for the most senior people. It's for the team leader. It's for the sales leader. It's for the service leader. And that's what's so exciting because that's been a void that I've always seen.
I couldn't agree. We use, not only were the old models, linear, right?
Yes.
But they were focused on our senior leaders. There was the assumption that leadership looked the same, or leadership was really only done, by these folks, inside of the core office of the organization, and they probably have titles like this.
Mhm.
That's just not true anymore. I think that organizations, if I had to say, what are organizations really trying to find their way through, it's how do we grow sustainably?
Yeah.
That's what they're trying to find their way through. And in order to grow sustainably, they are asking more people in more parts of the organization to lead something.
Yep.
Because of that, we don't just have, like one dimensional model. We have multiple, right? We have one for how these 7 pieces or these kind of 2 dimensions come together, for our team leaders. We have, another dimensional model that comes together for our sales leaders, etc. I so agree with you. It's modeling, but it's modeling for the modern leadership bench. So exciting.
Yeah. It's so exciting because that's been a big void.
Mhm. Okay, so breaking the frame starts with you got to have this in place, right? You got to have the modeling in place in order to break the frame on feedback, to make these things that have been so important to you and I over the years: timeliness, honesty and forthrightedness, the ability to have someone receive it and respond to it versus feel backed in the corner around it, right?
Mhm.
So how do we get those things to people? Well, you got to break the frame. And the first way you got to break the frame is you got to start with the right modeling. I think the next thing that you have to do is you have to start to use analytics, right?
Yes.
You know, and you have to create some sort of pictorial, some sort of dashboard that helps people to understand, oh, that's the timely feedback. That's the honest feedback. I can take that in and respond. And so let me give you an example. What analytics have now allowed us to do is to take a look at this model, take a look at this modeling, gather feedback, and give any leader at any level of inside an organization an understanding of, how are you doing? Are you red up here or are you green? Are you yellow down here or are you red? You know, where are your strengths? And where are your needs, your development needs, your weaknesses? And how can you take that feedback and to start to make it mean something in a sequential way so you can walk away going, aha, this is how to make myself better. This is how to make my business better. And that's going to impact everything, my people, my customers, the results, right? Analytics. You can now have leadership analytics that give people a heat mapped understanding of the sequential model of how modern leadership comes together. It's changed everything.
It has changed everything, and it for the first time puts the human element in it, because you think about when you run a business, you've got a dashboard of your financials.
Mhm.
If you're in sales, you have a dashboard for each salesperson, knowing where they are, what they're doing, how well they're doing. You think of,
Mhm.
in a personal basis, I look at my bank via a dashboard.
Mhm.
Now we have a dashboard for how we as a leader are doing. We
Mhm.
can see that, and we can change that. We
Mhm.
can work, refocus or reassess and look at the changing dynamic through those analytics.
Yeah. I agree. And one of the things that I get asked a lot, about is, for example, I say many times, every day, because I'm selling Rejuvi every day. I'm talking about Rejuvi every day. I'm talking about modern leadership every day. And I carefully have these words come out of my mouth. I say that Rejuvi is a modeling, analytics, and technology company that is pioneering the modern leadership space.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's so important to say those words in that order: modeling, analytics, and technology. Because if you're using your analytics or creating a dashboard for someone in general about their leadership capability, I believe that you're not maximizing all that's available to you. You're not breaking the frame, because modern models don't just give you a dashboard and piles of information. They start to show you how to put it together. And there is something about the modeling of modern leadership around, zoop, 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 do these things to make yourself better, right? Sequentially, you got to have this base, and then you can put this stuff on top of it, and then you can do these things over here, right? And when you're running your business, it's not three zoop, 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 it's four, like zoop, 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 zoop. Here are the four things that you have to start to be thinking about in a sequential way to really get things moving inside of your business. And so the dashboards that we now create for modern leaders are organized with that sequential modeling. So it's not just a random pile of stuff. It's organized in a way that they can kind of take it in and get to insights more quickly, like, oh, that is about how I ideate, right? Oh, that is about my micro and macro people skills. Oh, that's how I give direction to teams. It's totally organized, and I think that that's so meaningful.
And I agree, and so powerful, impactful. And if
Mhm.
I'm not doing one of those, I can go back, I can work on it and reassess and see how that's changing.
Mhm. So, I'm going to keep summarizing here because I think that this is such a powerful story that, we have some deeply experienced folks on the line that not only have used feedback principles in the past for themselves, but they have used these feedback principles to help groom literally thousands and thousands of other leaders. And we know what works, right? We know timeliness works. We know honesty and forthrightedness works. And we know creating an environment where a receiver of the feedback can respond rather than react is also helpful, right? So that's what we're aiming for. However, we got to break the frame so that these things can come together in a meaningful way. And they come together through modeling, a dimensional model, right? The Rejuvi dimensional model of leadership. And they come together because analytics is coming in and creating a dashboard of understanding in a sequential way, around this stuff. But here's the coolest thing, about now we've got to move to that word called technology, because it's not just modeling and it's not just analytics that are breaking the frame. We need these cool new emerging technologies to move things along at a rate that we never even thought possible. And so what's happening now with, advanced tools like generative AI, like predictive AI, like multimodal AI, it's allowing us, for example, to take the modeling and to put it into the engine. It allows us to take the analytics and to put it into the engine. And these tools now are able to produce narratives and nudging for the leader immediately, without a coach, without a trainer. It's just absolutely mind-blowing. Do you know what I mean, Kathy? I'm like, oh my gosh.
It is, and that's truly the excitement around this. Is 3 years ago, 5 years ago, you would never even been thinking in this way, and how things have changed, and it's mind-boggling. I don't know the words, but it's incredible, and to see it's real. We're not talking about pie in the sky coming, in years. It's here, and that's what's so exciting.
Yeah. Now this is not a question I had planned to ask, but when you and I get on these calls, it's just like they go kind of wherever. But you've been working with Rejuvi for from when it was only a twinkle,
It was a napkin discussion.
there we go. At least we weren't in a bar. I don't think we were in a bar. I think
No.
I think we were in actually a restaurant, but it definitely was a napkin conversation. But you've been around Rejuvi when it was just a napkin conversation. And now you're working with us to help us to start to understand exactly how do we break the frame by hooking together our modeling with our analytics through these emerging technologies. And some of the things that you've helped us to understand is that there are, two core targets as we think about Rejuvi and what we now are calling the Gen 1 and Gen Many application of Rejuvi, the Gen 1, Gen Many application of modern leadership. And so the two things that we're working on are, number one is how do we create these narratives and nudging based on the modeling and analytics? And then the second piece is around how do we start to point that leader to, based on insights from the narratives and the nudging, to resources that will be helpful, to him or her, or to the entire team, or to the entire unit, right? So you guys came back and said, okay, these are the two hot spots. So I've thought about this, and this is a question I want to ask you. If you had to say which one will leapfrog for which provides the most, like which provides most velocity for a leader? Do you think it's the narratives and the nudging on the modeling and analytics? Or do you think it's the resources based on the insights from the modeling and the analytics?
I think that they're certainly connected, but I think the one that will change people the most and change leadership is the nudging. Because, when I go back into my career, and it was always like the reason we did senior leaders, we didn't have the bandwidth in our learning and development programs to work with all leaders. We didn't have the financial resources to do that. And what Rejuvi has created is it takes those two negatives away. And I think if all leaders have access, the nudging and really want to succeed, and we started the conversation by we both agree that leaders do want to succeed. I think that will be the biggest change. The incredible resources behind it will be utilized, but I think the nudge to get there will be the biggest.
I agree. I agree that they're both important. And I think that one of the reasons why they're both important is when you take a look at the resources connected, to to the narratives and the nudging. Those are so important because in many cases, these resources are things that the entire team can work on together, right? And so a lot of times, and for all practical purposes, let me give you a good example. I think one of the favorite tools inside of the Rejuvi platform is the tool that a leader can use to reinforce the value proposition, right? I think so many times, unless you're in the marketing area of an organization, you hear the word value proposition and you think it's like a tagline, it's like a subtitle, when in reality, a value proposition is more of a body of work, and it demonstrates understanding of who your customers are and like what they're really dealing with and the gains and pains that they're trying to make. And it helps you to understand, well, how does the value of my company actually help those pains or serve those gains? And when you understand that, then you understand how you're differentiated from, for example, your competitor. But that's a process. It's a body of work, and it's a process that a team can go through to understand. And so I think that the resources that Rejuvi has are really important because a leader can use them with their teams to start to, share all of the stuff that you need to know in order to grow your organization in a sustainable way. Now, that said, you still have to create a spark in the leader to want to do that, right? You still have to create the energy, and the want to inside of that leader in order to go get that tool. And that's why I think that this idea of creating narratives and nudging are the upstream opportunity to break the frame. And it's why we're actually now aggressively working on that capability. You know what I mean? Because you gotta, you have these moments, and you and I both have had them as a leader, when you get feedback and you're like, oh, it gets into your skin, you own it,
Yeah.
and or you're doing that with a leader, you're maybe their coach, or you are their facilitator, and you give them something and it gets in their bones. And when it's in their bones, that's when the change is created,
Mhm.
you know?
It's something that, and again, I've been thinking about this for a while as I, hear Rejuvi 45s and see all your LinkedIn posts and things. Again, I'm been in the industry a very long time, and I think when I first sort of hear things, it's like, oh, so much of technology and the analytics, it's so wonderful because I love the technology and
Yes.
I'm amazed by the analytics. But part of it is like, oh, that really changes my job. And the more I learn, the more excited I am because, wow, that can change my job for
Mhm.
so much better. The things that in a learning and development role of in a business line or in HR, wherever it is, you can do so much more because of this. You've got phenomenal things that you had to work hours and hours on now are readily available
Well,
and
here's
amazing.
here's a practical example of that. How many times were you in a classroom having to help leaders to understand principles of giving feedback,
Mhm.
right?
Many, yes.
Right. And now those are built into the process. Those are built into the process. And what you can do now is spend your time on something that's going to be that's going to be take that leader further faster, because
Yes.
the principles of fantastic leadership are just built into the process. So you can help them, guess what? Understand that what's really missing, for example, is a team-wide understanding of the value proposition and how that fuels not only the strategic intent of the organization, but it starts to fuel the way people feel about their role and their purpose,
Right.
and the belief that they can win inside of the organization. You can teach them that stuff, right? Which then is like so much more, it's just so much more fun.
Oh my goodness, yes. Rather than repeating the same stuff over and
Yes.
over. This is miles more fun.
Yeah.
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 Amazing, amazing stuff.
Well, here we go. It's we've got 3 minutes left. I know it happens every time. It's just
Hey, we're
it's
just
so
getting
great.
started.
But I think, I think that this is just such a powerful story. And so this was a session where it was like we selected this specifically for you. It break the frame, and there are principles of feedback that everybody wants, right? Timeliness and honesty, and also received in such a way that allows you to take it in rather than react to it. Teaching those super healthy principles over and over again are not breaking the frame, and they're not taking advantage of all that's available to us. However, when you do move to new modeling, when you do start to leverage the analytics and new dashboards that are available to you, and you do start to take advantage of new technologies, right, that can allow you to create narratives and nudging, for true behavioral change that gets in the bones of that leader, right? Then they can go about running their business with their team, which is exactly what we want. And I think that that gets after, Rejuvi about a month ago kind of started to officially announce its future. People know that we have a platform, and and we now call that piece of the platform Gen 1. Gen 1 because it works with organizations one at a time to help them build their leadership capability. But we are expanding. And so it's not just the Gen 1 piece of the platform, it's the Gen many piece of the platform, being able to serve many leaders as well. And inside of that process, we've completely broken the frame, right? By using modeling, by using analytics, by using technology, so that you can really do what everybody wants, is you want to scale awareness of modern leadership. Everybody wants their leaders to be the kind that are compassionate human leaders at the same time as they are fierce business leaders. You can now scale that, right? And and you can individualize the learning, right? You can customize it. I know those words were super important to you. You can individualize it now, like
Yes.
you've never been able to. And that all points to, the third reason why we're moving to, the application to Gen 1 and Gen Many is then everybody gets better, right? You can help small organizations and you can help large organizations, and you can help people individually inside of those organizations or even outside of those organizations. That's the dream right there.
Amazing, because I just think it back and how this could be utilized in so many ways in business.
Mhm.
It really, really exciting.
Yeah.
The more I learn, the more excited I am.
My longtime friend, my longtime colleague, thank you so much for, I think just I think we called you you are literally one of the original believers in modern leadership. But thank you for, first of all, thank you for your service to the space. But thank you for continuing to come back to the Rejuvi 45 community, even in your rewirement, to contribute, because you have so much to offer, and there's so much good work to be done for all of those leaders who are learning to lead for the very first time in their careers. Thank you,
That's
Kat.
what's, I mean, thank you for having me, because this is a journey I don't want to get off. I want to keep
Yep,
going.
me too. Me too. We're going to keep going. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Everyone, thank you for tuning in today. Thank you for watching our recordings. Thank you for watching our reels. When you watch them, and like them, next time bring a friend. I mean, the whole idea here is to build this community of modern leadership practitioners. We'll be back next Thursday. Our topic will be a quantum leap. And same time as always, which is 2 p.m. Eastern. We will see you then. Everybody have a great morning, have a great afternoon, and have a great evening.
Take care.